Mr. President, I believe there is time in opposition to this motion.
The senator is correct.
And I would like to claim about 10 minutes of that time.
Without objection.
Mr. President, here we go again. Yet again, my friends on the other side of the aisle are trying to sell the American people a bill of goods and try to convince them drilling along our shores will do something to lower gas prices. Now, opening our shores to drilling was a bad idea in June of last year when we voted down an amendment to the energy bill, very similar. It was a bad idea when this body voted it down in March of this year on an amendment to the budget resolution. And it was a bad idea when we voted this idea down by well over 14 votes just 2 days ago on an amendment to the flood insurance bill. Mr. President, ending a bipartisan 26-year moratorium on oil drilling on the outer continental shelf will do nothing but jeopardize our precious natural resources. The Energy Information Administration projects that even if we open the entire outer continental shelf to drilling, off the East Coast, off the West Coast, and open the entire eastern Gulf of Mexico, nothing would happen to gas prices. Nothing. Why? First, because production wouldn't begin until the year 2017. The infrastructure to drill for oil is not just a large oil platform, but a network of hundreds of miles of pipelines to transport oil from the platform onto the land and then onto the refineries. And this kind of infrastructure simply does not exist on the East Coast and in only limited exceptions on the West Coast. The second reason why opening up all our shores to oil drilling will not lower gas prices is because by the time full production actually ramped up in 2030, drilling off all of the coasts full tilt would only result in a whopping 3% of increase in domestic production. And even in 2030, as our continent is rung all the way around by oil platforms, all of this new supply would be eaten up by a 7% increase in domestic demand. So the Energy Information Administration predicts, and I quote, any impact on average wellhead prices is expected to be insignificant. The fact of the matter is that over 80% of the resources in the outer continental shelf are already open for exploration. Since 2001, the Bush administration has issued over 100 new leases. Many of these leases are in the eastern Gulf, where the oil industry already has much of the infrastructure necessary to go in production. And yet only 12 of these new wells have been drilled. The industry is only developing a small fraction of the area already open for drilling. So why isn't ExxonMobil pumping some of its profits into developing these areas? Companies are not interested in developing the large fields already open in the Gulf of Mexico. Why is it so critical to open up environmentally sensitive areas to more drilling? Mr. President, in my home state of New Jersey, the New Jersey Shore is a priceless treasure that my home state will protect at any cost. But the shore also generates tens of billions of dollars in revenues each year and supports almost 500,000 jobs. If we open the East Coast to drilling, we jeopardize a tourism and fishing economy worth tens of billions of dollars in exchange for a cumulative total of only a half year's supply of oil. A half year's supply of oil, jeopardizing, however, tens of billions of dollars. People in New Jersey cannot afford the risk that takes place to our wildlife, to our economy, and for that fact, I believe people up and down the coast as well. Florida beaches generate billions of dollars each year. In South Carolina, Myrtle Beach alone brought in $3 billion in revenue. Do we really want oil washing up into the pristine Cape Hatteras National Seashore? Or what about Virginia Beach? And can Maryland's famous blue crab survive yet another environmental assault? Bottom line is this proposal will do nothing to lower gas prices, but it will jeopardize coastal economies all along both coasts. Now, to simply say that, well, it's up to an individual state, that doesn't work. The ocean doesn't have neat little boxes in which it is divided into. So the reality is that the ability to open up the continental shelf in one location threatens, if there is an accident, the beaches along the shoreline along that same region. This isn't about just making it one versus another. This is a continuity. Now, there are other things we can do about gas prices. I'm glad that we saw, and hopefully the President will soon sign into law, the Democratic proposal that passed Congress overwhelmingly to suspend filling the Strategic Petroleum Reserve through December 2008. People are suffering paying $4 a gallon of gas when gas prices are pushing up the cost of food and the price of oil is broken $125 a barrel. It makes no sense to be buying at the high level and then putting that oil in the ground when we're already 97% of where we need to be for the nation's security, burying this precious commodity when we need it the most. Hopefully the President will sign this important measure and we can truly begin to help gas prices go back down and offer some relief. But it begs even the bigger question, Mr. President, and that is breaking our dependency on foreign oil, seeking renewable sources, and finding new automobiles in which we drive in our country in a way, and moving to mass transit, having greater conservation. These are all the elements that are going to be necessary. It's also about ending speculation on the marketplace. Why is it that when we have testimony before House and Senate committees that say that the price of oil should be somewhere between $50 and $70 a barrel between demand and supply, that we're looking at $125? Well, let's go after the speculators. Let's go through a regulatory process that ensures that this one market that's so critical ultimately has the regulation necessary. Finally, Mr. President, we can't drill our way out of oil addiction. Can't drill our way out of oil addiction. We must promote sustainable alternative fuels, incentivize people to buy more efficient cars, raise the fuel economy standards, and help commercialize, something we don't do well in the United States, commercialize technologies that allow us to run our cars, for example, on electricity. General Motors plans to introduce a plug-in hybrid in 2010, and Nissan just announced it will start selling an electric car in that same year. Once we get this type of technology right, our constituents will be able to run their cars much more cheaply. Some studies project that electricity would be the equivalent of 60 cents per gallon of gasoline. That, as a fuel source for the future, is just around the corner. We understand that. We want to incentivize it. We want to move it in the right direction. But, Mr. President, on the other side, if all you want to do is create more addiction to the oil, find another vein to which to pop into and go ahead and drill, even when all that is already open is not being drilled, it's just the wrong policy. We have defeated 3 times in the Senate over the last year or so such provisions. I urge my colleagues to defeat the Vitter motion to instruct and make sure that we keep this bipartisan 26-year moratoria intact. Mr. President, I yield back any time that may be left in opposition and yield the floor.